Welcome to All Ages Driving School Teen Driver's Ed Day 2 of the Distance Learning course. So before we get started, we're going to head over to our website and look at all the different things you're going to need to use for today. And then we're going to be jumping in right into Chapter 4 of the DPS Handbook. So let's get started. Before we get started into Chapter 4 of your DPS Handbook for right-of-way, let's go ahead and just refresh real quick on our All Ages Driving School website. This is the home page. If you need a copy of the DPS Handbook, you just click on More, Resources. Right here, DPS Handbook in English, you click on the image. If you need it in Spanish, click on the image. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 4. All right, right of way, very important. Also, keep in mind, if you need a list of right of way rules, if you come down here to download under Resources, open it up, and you'll have all the 13 rules of right-of-way. Okay, so go ahead and keep that handy, print it out, or keep it on your screen, or different tabs, and let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 4. All right, so Chapter 4, right-of-way. At times, a driver must yield to others. There are certain rules to help determine who has the right-of-way. However, if the other driver doesn't follow these rules, give him or her the right-of-way. Remember, in every situation, right-of-way is something given, not taken. All drivers should know and understand the laws that determine who has the right-of-way. Now, in case you're wondering, what exactly does right-of-way mean? What I like to tell my students is right-of-way is basically who has the right to occupy that space, right? So if you let someone else occupy that space, you're giving them the right-of-way. If you feel like you have the right to occupy that space, you're taking the right-of-way, right? So whenever there's an accident out there on the road and two cars were to meet just like this, make contact, well, in that space where they made contact, one had the right of way and one didn't. When a police officer comes out, he determines who had the right of way, and whoever should have yielded, that means allowing someone else the right of way, whoever should have yielded would get the ticket for failure to yield the right of way. Okay, so what is the offense if a police officer does give you a ticket for failing to yield the right-of-way? Driver commits any traffic offense of which a failure to yield the right-of-way to another vehicle is an element and causes bodily injury to another. It is a fine anywhere between $500 to $2,000. If a driver causes serious bodily injury to another or even death, it can be a $1,000 to $4,000 fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with different types of right-of-way scenarios. Right-of-way at intersections. Okay, intersections is usually controlled by signs or signals. All right, stop sign, stop light. When a sign and signal control traffic at an intersection, you must obey them. Know the meaning of each sign and signal, and we're going to go over those signs and signals in Chapter 5. All right, single or two-lane road intersections at multi-lane roads. If you are driving on a single or two-lane road that intersects with a divided road or a road with 3 or more lanes, you must yield the right-of-way to vehicles traveling on the divided or 3 or more lane road. Unpaved roads intersecting paved roads. Well, first of all, if you've ever been driving on a road like Shaver, where it's like 4 lanes, you got 2 lanes going one direction, 2 lanes going the other direction, but you have a side street that comes up and it's a 2-lane, two-way street. Well, that 2-lane must yield to the 4-lane. All right, so roads that have more lanes have the right-of-way over roads that intersect it that have less lanes. So you'll always see the stop signs on the smaller roads leading up to the larger roads. If you're on an unpaved intersecting a paved road, if you are driving on an unpaved road that intersects with a paved road, you must yield the right-of-way to vehicles traveling on the paved road. Intersections not controlled by signs, signals, multi-lanes, or pavements. Okay, now this is important. You may see a question on your test that may deal with this. When approaching this type of intersection, yield the right-of-way to any vehicle that has entered or approaching the intersection on your right. If the road to your right is clear, or if approaching a vehicle are far enough from the intersection to make your crossing safe, you may proceed. Since there are not any traffic controls at this intersection, make sure there are no approaching vehicles from the left. You may legally have the right-of-way, but be sure the other driver yields to you before you proceed. Uncontrolled intersections are intersections that don't have any signs, signals, or anything else, and it's basically just two roads crossing each other. You see this from time to time in suburban neighborhoods and also out in rural areas. In those situations, you definitely want to treat it like a four-way stop sign. Anytime I'm approaching an uncontrolled intersection, I'll go ahead and slow down, stop, look both ways, make sure there's no cars coming. If there is a car coming, let's say there's a car coming to the left, even though you have the right of way, what I would do is I would wait for that car to stop before I would go ahead and exercise my right of way. But if I'll just assume that car's not going to stop at all, and if that's the case, then I'll just go ahead and let that car go, allow them to have the right of way even though I may have it, and then proceed safely when it's clear. Okay. Turning left, when turning left, always yield the right of way to any vehicle coming straight through the other direction. So if you're ever in a turn lane, you're trying to get into a business and you got to turn left in front of oncoming traffic, you must yield to oncoming traffic. Private roads and driveways. All right, so when you pull out of your own driveway in the morning, cars already on the road have the right of way over you. So when entering or crossing a road, street, or highway from a private road, alley, building, or driveway, you must stop prior to the sidewalk and yield the right of way to all approaching vehicles and pedestrians. Notice how it says prior to the sidewalk. Well, pedestrians have a right of way on that sidewalk, so you cannot block the sidewalk while you're waiting to turn into traffic. So you must stop behind the sidewalk, then look. Once it's clear, then you may proceed. All right, T intersection. This is what a T intersection looks like right here. T intersection, when approaching an intersection of a through street traveling from a street that ends at the intersection, you must stop and yield the right of way to vehicles on the through street. So if you come across a T intersection, obviously you're going to stop, and it shows this car right here stopping. These cars going in either direction have the right of way. You must yield to these vehicles before proceeding. So if you're turning left, you must yield to both lanes of traffic. If turning right, you must yield to this lane of traffic. Entering or leaving controlled access highway. The driver traveling on a frontage road of a controlled access highway must yield the right of way to a vehicle entering or about to enter the frontage road from the highway, and leaving or about to leave the frontage road to enter the highway. Okay, so if you're on the frontage road, you must yield, so it shows a yield sign, to people coming off the freeway. So if I'm right here and I'm not getting onto the freeway and I continue to go straight, I must yield to traffic coming off the intersection, all right, from that exit lane, or excuse me, off the freeway. This is the exit lane right here. All right, two-way frontage road. You'll find these out in rural areas along I-10 and other major interstates. When you're outside city limits, you'll find a two-way frontage road. Okay, it would be the same way on both ends. Okay, you would have to yield to traffic coming on to the frontage, onto the on-ramp from the frontage road to the freeway, and you'd also have to yield to cars coming off the exit ramp going onto the frontage road. So if you're on the frontage road, you must yield, okay? Always must yield to people coming on and off the freeway. Driving on multiple lane roads, okay? So multiple lane road would be more like you're on I-45, I-10, downtown, in city limits. You'll have three roads going in the same direction, sometimes even six. It gets pretty big. But there are rules of right-of-way in terms of who has right to a lane over another vehicle. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. On a road divided into 3 or more lanes with traffic moving in the same direction, a vehicle entering a lane of traffic from the right must yield the right-of-way to a vehicle entering the same lane of traffic from the left. So let's say you're in the far right-hand lane and you want to get into the middle lane. Okay, so you check your mirrors, you look in your blind spot, everything looks good, but at the same time, the car from the far left lane is also trying to maneuver into the middle lane, so you both go for that middle lane at the same time. If you go through it at the same time, the car on the left in the faster lane will have the right of way over the vehicle in the right-hand lane or the slower lane, and therefore the vehicle on the right-hand lane must yield to the vehicle going into the middle lane from the left-hand lane. So railroad grade crossings. When approaching a railroad grade crossing, stop between 15 and 50 feet from the nearest rail. A clearly visible railroad signal warns of an approaching train. A crossing gate is lowered or a flag person warns of an approaching train. A driver is required to stop by an official traffic control device or a traffic control signal. An approaching train is within about 1,500 feet of the crossing. The train will produce an audible signal to identify the immediate hazard. An approaching train is visible and in close proximity to the crossing. So obviously, who yields, the train or you? You yield to the train. Trains cannot stop and slow down for you. Okay, so that means you got to stop at least 15 feet behind that railing in order for you to be safe. You're required to stop at a railroad grade crossing and remain stopped until allowed to proceed or it's safe to proceed. A person who fails to obey the law regarding railroad grade crossings is subject to a $50 to $200 fine. Additional safe driving procedures at railroad crossings. If a railroad crossing is marked only with a crossbuck sign or a reduced speed sign, then look both ways and listen for a whistle. If a train is approaching, stop. If a train is not approaching, proceed with caution. So as you approach that train track, you're going to be looking, if you have visibility, you're going to be looking both left and right to see if a train is coming. If you don't have visibility, okay, you want to stop and then look to see if a train is coming. And you also want to hear the audible. So that means if you're approaching a railroad track, it's a good idea to maybe roll down your windows, get a better, so you can better hear to see if a train is coming, or hear a train is coming. They'll have that whistle blowing. But if you're out in rural areas, those trains are going pretty fast. They can get up to 80 miles per hour, if not faster. And if you're not paying attention going over the railroad tracks, that's where problems happen. All right. If red lights are flashing at a railroad crossing, you want to stop. If a train is approaching, remain stopped until the train passes and the lights stop flashing. If the railroad crossing gates have been lowered, stop, remain stopped, and wait until the train passes and the gates are raised before crossing. Be sure the tracks are clear before you proceed to cross. There may be 2 or more sets of tracks. One train could be blocking the view of another. Never stop on the tracks. If your car stalls on the tracks and you cannot restart it, get out and try to push the car off the tracks. If you cannot push the car off the tracks, get help. If a train is approaching and your vehicle is stalled, get out quickly and move away from the tracks. Run towards the approaching train to the side of the tracks to avoid flying debris. Okay, so in this situation, if a train's not coming, you're stalled on the tracks, yeah, get the car off the tracks. But if a train is coming, you're stalled on the tracks and you can't get it off on time, you want to move away from the tracks and then run towards the train, so that way when the train does make contact with the car, it's debris is not going to hit you. Because if you try to go in the direction with the train, that debris is going to be flying towards your direction. All right. 6, remember, trains do not and cannot stop at crossing. Trains always have the right of way. Okay, remember that. Trains always have the right of way. Audible signs or whistles may be difficult to hear when approaching railroad crossings. Roll your windows down, turn your radio down, and listen carefully. All right. If you encounter a railroad grade crossing signal problem, call the Texas Department of Public Safety Communications Center. This is the number right here. If you ever come across a malfunctioning crossing gate or signal, or call your local police station or county sheriff. Each railroad crossing signal has an identifying number. Please note the number and be ready to provide it when reporting a problem. So, yielding the right-of-way to emergency vehicles. This is very important. Okay, you must yield the right-of-way to police cars, fire trucks, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles sounding a siren, bell, or flashing red light. If traffic allows, pull to the right of the edge of the road and stop. If you're unable to pull over to the right, slow down and leave a clear path for the emergency vehicle. 1. You are not allowed to follow within 500 feet of a fire truck, answering an alarm, or an ambulance when the flashing red lights are on. So you cannot follow a fire truck or an ambulance, and if you happen to go in the same direction, you must give them at least 500 feet distance between you and yourself. All right, between you and the emergency vehicle. 2, do not drive or park on the street where the fire truck has answered an alarm. 3, do not park in a location that interferes with the arrival or departure of an ambulance to or from the scene of an emergency. Unless otherwise directed by law enforcement officer, drivers who approach a stopped emergency vehicle with its lights activated must 1, vacate the lane closest to the emergency vehicle and the highway has 2 or more lanes traveling in the direction of the emergency vehicle. 2, slow to a pace not more than 20 miles per hour less than the posted speed limit when the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or more. And 3, slow to a speed less than 5 miles per hour when posted speed limit is less than 25 miles per hour. So if you see an emergency vehicle on the side of the road and you're about to pass it, if you have the option to and there's a lane next to you that you can get into, go ahead and move over one lane. It's called the move over law. All right, so when you see a police car stopping somebody, if you see an ambulance, if you see a fire truck, you want to go ahead and give them space, and it makes it safer for everybody. If you don't have the ability to move over one lane, then you must slow down 20 miles below the speed limit. So if the speed limit is over 25 miles per hour, let's say it's 45, well then you have to go 25 miles per hour when passing that particular emergency situation. All right, so yielding the right-of-way of school buses. Now this is very important because I would think most people who do get their license suspended, it's because of this very infraction right here. Failing to yield the right-of-way to school buses. All right, so pay attention. You must yield the right-of-way to school buses. Always drive with care when you are near a school bus. If you approach a school bus from either direction and the bus is displaying alternately flashing red lights, you must stop. Do not pass the school bus until 1, the school bus has resumed motion, 2, you are signaled by the driver to proceed, 3, the red lights are no longer flashing. Okay, it is not necessary to stop when passing a school bus on a different road when on a controlled access highway when the bus is stopping in a loading zone or pedestrians aren't permitted to cross. A person who fails to obey the law regarding yielding the right-of-way to school buses displaying the alternating flashing lights is subject to the penalties listed below. All right, so first conviction, $500. All right, second conviction, a fine not less than $1,000, no more than $2,000, possible suspension of your driver's license up to 6 months. Person causes bodily injury to another when passing a stopped school bus. It's a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by up to a fine of $4,000 and 1 year in jail. Person causes serious bodily injury to another and has previously been convicted of passing a school bus and causing bodily injury. It is considered a felony, punishable by 180 days to 2 years confinement and a possible fine up to $10,000. Now, what I want you to pay attention here is, here you have a school bus, you have cars behind it, and of course, obviously, if you're behind the school bus, you're going to stop every time they pick up and unload children. On this side, it's opposing traffic going this way. Notice it's only divided by lines. Okay, there is no median in between. All right, so because there's no median in between, all traffic must stop. Even if it's a 4-lane road, you could have 2 lanes going one direction, 2 lanes going in the other direction. If there's no physical barrier or median dividing the two opposing sides of traffic, all traffic must stop. Now, if there was a median here and there was a physical barrier, then this side of traffic that's on the opposite of the bus may continue down the road without stopping, but only under those circumstances. In most circumstances, you won't have this median. You won't have a median. You'll just simply have a line. So therefore, everybody must stop, especially in areas where there's schools nearby. All right, yield the right of way to pedestrians, persons on foot. I'll make it real simple for you. You must yield to pedestrians always, under any circumstance. All right, so avoid turning a car into a deadly weapon. You should always be on the lookout for individuals who are on foot, pedestrians, whether they have the right of way or not. Drivers must give the right of way to pedestrians. 1. At an uncontrolled intersection, there are not any traffic signs or signals for the pedestrian to enter the crosswalk. 2. If the pedestrian has a walk or signal, or A, if there is not a pedestrian control signal, give the pedestrian the right of way on a green light. B, if the light changes after the pedestrian has entered the crosswalk, still give the pedestrian the right of way. Yield here to pedestrian signs. The yield here to pedestrian sign is used when yield lines are used in advance of a marked crosswalk that crosses an uncontrolled multi-lane roadway. In street and overhead pedestrian crossing signs, the in-street pedestrian crossing signs and or the overhead pedestrian crossing signs may be used to remind road users of laws regarding right-of-way at a pedestrian crosswalk without signals. The in-street pedestrian crossing signs are placed in the road at the crosswalk location on the center line or a lane line or on a median island The in-street pedestrian crossing signs will not be posted on the left or right-hand side of the road. The overhead pedestrian crossing signs are placed over the roadway at the crosswalk. Okay, so it's real simple. You want to give pedestrians the right of way. The moment they put their foot on the road and they start walking across the street, even if they're jaywalking and you see it, you don't want to hit them. You want to go ahead and slow down, stop, let them go, let them pass. You want to avoid making contact with anybody. Even if you have a bunch of protesters coming across the freeway and they're blocking the entire freeway, you can't just gas it and go through that crowd of people. You must stop. The pedestrians always have the right of way, even when they're breaking the law, like such as jaywalking or crossing the street illegally. Okay, most pedestrians, they must cross at an intersection, right? So that's where they legally can cross, but at the same time, under the rule of law, you must, if able, give them the right of way even when they're breaking the law, such as jaywalking. So these are pedestrian signs that you see. You see this right here, the hand means don't walk. You see the walk signal where it allows them to walk. These are the different types of crossings you may see for pedestrians. Okay. So before we move to chapter 5, let's go ahead and look at the questions for chapter 4. So the questions for chapter 4 out of your DPS handbook include question 13, 19, 26, 27, 58, and 66. Go ahead and take 15 to 20 minutes time now to go ahead and work on those questions before proceeding to chapter 5. Once completed with those questions, go on to chapter 5 and we'll move on. Alright, so chapter 5. Now chapter 5 is going to be its own test when you have your knowledge test at the end of session 3. Chapter 5, it's going to be part of the road signs test, and so you need to be very familiar with this chapter if you're going to do well on that portion of your exam. Now remember, you got to pass 2 exams in order to get your DE form and go down the DPS to get your learner's license or permit. So it's real important that you pay attention to this chapter. Alright, so signals, signs, and markers. Alright, traffic signals. A solid red light, or a steady red light, obviously means stop. However, a flashing red light means stop completely, and you treat it like a 4-way stop sign. So you follow the rules of right-of-way when dealing with a flashing red light, because a flashing red light is never going to turn green. So, whereas a steady red light, a solid red light, will eventually turn green, and that'll be your signal to go. Alright, so steady yellow light. A lot of people think it means slow down, which in most cases people do slow down when seeing a yellow light. However, its main purpose is caution. Okay, a steady yellow light warns drivers to use caution and to alert them that the light is about to change to red. Okay, so whenever you're driving and you see a yellow light, and this is something that's going to take a lot of practice and time to get used to, is depending on how fast you're going, the conditions of the road, how far away you are from the intersection itself, there is a thing called a point of no return. So anytime you approach a light and it turns yellow, you have to determine whether or not you're at the point of no return for you to go ahead and continue through the intersection. And there's a lot of things you have to consider. Okay, like I said, you got to consider the conditions of the road. Is it raining? Are the roads wet? Is it going to take longer to the stop than usual? How close you are to the intersection? How fast you're going? Because, for example, if you were to approach an intersection and you're fairly close, but and you have the ability to brake hard and stop behind the red line, but at the same time you have a large 18-wheeler behind you, and if you were to stop hard or brake hard, that 18-wheeler wouldn't be able to stop at the same efficiency as you are. So in that case, if you're able to, and it's either or, it's a toss-up to go through that intersection under that particular circumstance, it may be better to go ahead and go through the intersection with that 18-wheeler behind you. Now what I mean by that is that you're not running a red light. The light is still yellow as you're proceeding through the intersection. What I'm meaning is that if you're close enough and you're going fast enough and you have an 18-wheeler behind you and it requires you to brake hard to stop for that light, then it may be safer for you to go ahead and just proceed through the yellow light instead of trying to brake hard and stop for it, because you may cause an accident behind you. Same thing if the roads are wet. So you really got to kind of gauge it, judge it. It takes time. It takes a lot of practice, but over time, you'll get a good feeling of where that point of no return is, and you're going to have different variations from going 50 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour. You'll start getting a good feel of where you need to stop or when you need to start braking to slow down for a light in order for you not to run a red light. So you definitely don't want to speed up. That's not something we want to practice. A flashing yellow light. Okay, a flashing yellow light warns drivers that they must slow down and proceed with caution. All right, so flashing yellow lights you see in school zones, you'll see on steep curves, you'll see them around fire stations, things like that. So anytime you see a flashing yellow light, you must slow down. Okay, a flashing yellow arrow for left turns. A flashing yellow arrow allows a driver to turn left, but the driver must yield the right-of-way to oncoming traffic. So a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between a solid green light on a left turn and a flashing yellow arrow on a left turn? They both mean the same in regards to turning left. You're allowed to proceed, but you must yield the right-of-way to oncoming traffic. Okay. A steady green light, a solid green light means go. You have the right-of-way to proceed through the intersection. However, you must yield to cars already in the intersection. Okay, and what I mean by that is, have you ever been in a situation where traffic is really built up? You're sitting at a red light, and traffic going through the intersection builds up in the intersection, and then all of a sudden your light turns green, but you still have cars left over in the intersection from the previous light. Well, those cars in the intersection, even though you now have a green light, have the right of way until that intersection is cleared. So cars already in the intersection always have the right of way to those approaching the intersection, even if your light is green. So you got to remember that. Okay, so even though it signals that you have the right to go, you still got to follow the rules of right of way. And of course, if there's a pedestrian on the crosswalk, you got to yield to the pedestrian. All right, green arrow displayed at the same time as a red light. Pay attention to this. You may find this on your test. A green arrow displayed at the same time as a red light means the driver can proceed carefully in the direction of the arrow after yielding the right of way to other vehicles and pedestrians. All right, so that means you have a protected left turn, but you still must yield the right of way to other vehicles and pedestrians in the intersection. All right, left turn on a green, just like a left turn on a green flashing, or excuse me, on a yellow flashing arrow. You can turn left on a green light. However, you must yield the right of way to all traffic that is approaching from the opposite direction before turning. Okay, and this is what it looks like right here. Traffic signs. Traffic signs can help you to be a better driver because they, 1, warn of hazards ahead that are difficult to see. 2, guide drivers to their destinations by identifying the route. 3, inform of local regulations and practices. And 4, regulate the speed and movement of traffic. So traffic signs are very important. There is a difference between a signal and a sign. A sign is something that you basically read or decipher, and a signal is usually an electronic device of some kind that that gives you color, and it changes or possibly changes. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the different colors and shapes of signs. Okay, so if you're colorblind, it's okay because we have shapes as well. The government tries its hardest to give you as much information as possible. Okay, but if you can see both colors and shapes, then you get even more information. All right, so let's go over those colors real quick. The color red. All right, so red means either stop, yield, or do what is posted on the sign. Okay, so stop signs, yield signs, you'll see the red color there. Also, you'll see the red prohibited circle with a line through, letting you know that it's prohibited. Green indicates movement is permitted in the direction or guidance. Another example of a green sign is basically to, like for instance, direction guidance. Like if you see a stop sign that's red and then above it you see 2 green signs that cross each other and they have names on it, well, it's telling you where you're at, right? You're on the corner of such and such street. Also, if you see a green sign that indicates It says how far away a city is. So if I'm driving down I-10 and I see San Antonio 180 miles, it's letting me know from point A, that sign, to point B in San Antonio is 180 miles. Now, a lot of people have a question, well, where does point B signify when you see that sign? When you see a green sign telling you how many miles it is to the location that you're going, well, that location it's referring to is that city's courthouse. Most city courthouses are downtown because that's where a city is born. Once a city courthouse is built, because it's required anytime you apply for to be incorporated as a city, Austin will tell you need to build this building, and that building would be a courthouse. And so most courthouses for most cities are smack in the middle of their downtown because that's where the city was born, and it grows out from that way. But that's what it's referring to. So every time you see a black dot on a map, it's basically from courthouse to courthouse to courthouse for that particular city, because that's where the city was born. Okay, blue signs are by far my favorite. It lets me know if there's a Waffle House at the next exit. Blue signs are your service guide signs. So a lot of times you'll see them out there on freeways, interstates. If you're driving down Interstate 10 and almost every single exit that you come towards, you're going to see that blue sign off to the right, and it's going to let you know about three things. Okay, three things are important in order to sustain a long road trip. One, of course, is gas. Your car needs gas in order for it to keep going. Two is food for yourself, right? So you'll see restaurants. And three is you'll need sleep, and that's lodging. So food, gas, and lodging, those are the three things you're going to see on that blue sign on most interstates when approaching an exit. And then also you'll also see blue signs anywhere around hospitals or within a mile of a hospital guiding you towards that hospital. You'll see a blue sign with a white H on it, and underneath it an arrow giving you a general direction of where that hospital is, because if you're in a city you're not familiar with, and there's a medical condition that you need help with, you need to go to the hospital, it'll guide you to your nearest hospital from that point. So look out for those blue signs with an H on it if you need to go to the hospital. You don't know where the hospital is. Yellow signs are by far the most abundant signs you'll see out there. Yellow signs are basically your general warning or caution signs. So I would say the vast majority of signs out there are going to be yellow. All right. Black and white signs are your regulatory signs. Okay, these are things that basically you get tickets for. All right, so if you see a black and white sign that says speed limit 55 miles per hour and you're going faster than that, you're going to get a ticket. If it says no turn from shoulder and you turn from shoulder, you can get a ticket from it. It says no right on red, and it's going to be in black and white, you're going to get a ticket for it. So basically it's a regulation sign. It's regulating how you're driving or what you're allowed and not allowed to do. All right, orange. Orange is your construction, warning, and maintenance sign. All right, so you'll see a number of signs that will be turning into orange, okay, to let you know. Like, for instance, if you see a diamond-shaped sign and it's orange, you're in a construction zone, and you also got to look out for that particular hazard. So same thing with speed limit. It may be an orange, and therefore you got to follow the speed limit, and you're also in a construction zone. All right, so same thing, orange, retroflective, used on various types of signs. Same thing as a construction zone. They mean the same. It's just a little bit more, you could see a little bit better under light conditions. Brown is your public recreation and scenic guide signs. Okay, so anytime you see a public park nearby, it's going to be designated by a brown sign. Okay, same thing with the scenic route or scenic area, public areas, parks, state parks, national parks, municipal parks, all of those. All right, so you also have shapes. So we already know about the colors. Let's talk about the shapes. All right, so octagon is exclusively for stop signs. Horizontal rectangles are generally for your guide signs. Your equilateral triangles are exclusively your yield signs. Okay, you may see this on your test right here. Your pennant-shaped sign, if you're in my teen class, you've got to know what a pennant-shaped sign means. Okay, this is what a pennant shape looks like, and it's basically a no-pass zone. Diamond, all right, you may see a diamond on your permit exam, so you want to look out for that. Take note of it. Diamonds are exclusively to warn of existing or possible hazards on roads or adjacent areas. All right, this one right here, vertical rectangle, this may also be on your permit test, so make note of the vertical rectangle. These are your regulatory signs like speed limits. All right, pentagons are your school zones, and circles are exclusively for railroads. Okay. So warning signs. Warning signs alert drivers to conditions that are immediately ahead and tell them what to look out for. There may be road hazards, changes in directions, or some other situation you should know about. Not only must warning signs be observed for safety reasons, but to disregard them may be a traffic violation. When you encounter a warning sign, you should 1. Pay attention, 2. Follow instructions, and 3. Reduce speed to at least the posted speed limits or speed signs. All right, so this right here, you'll see in chapter 5, it literally has almost every sign you'll see out there on the road when you're driving your car. And you'll notice most of them are yellow, right? You see most of these are yellow. And then of course your regulatory warning signs, right? Not as many as the yellow, but still very important. Okay, and these are your guide signs that you normally see out there. All right, your railroad crossings. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically go over with you some of the most common that you may see on your exam from my years of teaching. So that way you have a good idea of which ones you need to know in order to pass. But I'm also going to give you time to go ahead and review these road signs in your DPS handbook. Once we go over which road signs are by far the most common on your road test, and which ones probably are going to be the most you see out there on the road anyways. It's good to know all of them and know what they mean, but at the same time, to pass your road test, it's important that you have immediate knowledge of the ones we're about to go over. So this one right here, I want you to go ahead and look at this sign right here. I'm circling it right here with my mouse. All right, so this right here is the low clearance sign. It says 12 feet 6 inches. It could say pretty much anything. Basically, you'll see these on overpasses as you approach an overpass ahead. All right, it'll let you know. So if you have a rig or a trailer or something that you're driving that is higher than this point or whatever number it's giving you when you're driving down the road, you're not going to clear that underpass. So it's the height of the underpass from road surface is shown. Do not try to enter if your load is higher than the figure shown on the sign. All right, so and even when you're not on the roadways, you'll see these at banks. If you try to go through the drive-through teller, you'll see these in drive-throughs at fast food restaurants where you have that bar that goes up that tells you that, hey, they don't want big trucks going through their drive-throughs. But for roadways, you'll see this right here. It'll also be on the overpass as you approach it, but the sign will also be before the overpass to give you fair warning to slow down, pull over if your load is higher than that number that they show. Okay, this right here, this sign is a sharp right turn. Notice how it's a 90-degree turn. Okay, so a sharp right turn in the direction of the arrow. Slow down, keep right, and do not pass. Okay, this one right here, winding road. There is a winding road up ahead. Drive slowly and carefully and do not pass. Some students confuse the winding road with the double curve. This is not a double curve. This is by far more than 2 curves, but it is a winding road. Okay, winding road. You got to know what that means. This sign right here just lets you know that there's a median up ahead. All right, stay right of the median anytime you go. This is showing which directions the cars are flowing. All right. You're approaching a median, and this one right here, you're leaving an area where there's a median. All right, this sign right here basically lets you know that there's another road that is opening up to another lane. All right, you'll usually find these near on interstates near entrance ramps, where the entrance ramps is nice enough to have their own lane going into the freeway. This one right here is probably one of the most important in terms of danger here in Houston. Slow down on wet road. Do not suddenly turn, stop, or speed up. Some roads do get pretty slippery out there, especially out there around the plants and the oil, the gas oil plants. They do kind of drip a lot on those roads, and you'll see those signs out there. So anytime it rains, it's going to get pretty slippery out there. So you need to be careful, especially when you see this sign, and you always need to be careful when you're in wet weather. Now this one right here is the double curve. Okay, so this is the double curve sign. This is the one that you really got to watch out for on your test. I've seen it many times when proctoring the test. So double curve is good to know. All right, the road curves one way to the right and then one way to the left. Slow down, keep right, and do not pass. Okay, this one right here is just a curve sign, all right, and sometimes you'll have an advisory speed under it, and we'll go over that later. All right, this right here is the crossroad. All right, notice how it goes in 4 different directions. All right, the crossroad ahead, slow down, watch for cross traffic, look carefully in all directions for traffic. This one right here lets you know that a road is merging in with yours, and it's reduced. I basically call it a reduction in lane sign. Gives you advance notice of reduction in the number of lanes a pavement is up ahead. All right, this one right here, Y intersection. You'll possibly see this sign on your test. I've seen it many times when proctoring the test. So Y intersection, and it's something you got to look out for. It says side road traffic to the right. Okay, so Y intersection or side road traffic to the right. So pay attention to that, side road traffic to the right when seeing a Y intersection. Dip signs. Dip signs are really simple. It just means there's a low spot in the road up ahead. I always tell my students, always respect the bumps and the dips. You're not going to get a ticket for going fast over a dip. However, you will ruin your vehicle. All right, so if you want to keep your vehicle in good working order and you don't want to have to pay a lot of money to get it fixed, do not go fast over a dip. Okay, this one right here you may also see on your test. It looks like an arrow with a tail. It's basically letting you know that there's a road that merges in with yours up ahead, and watch for traffic from that direction. You'll see these out there on freeways and interstates, so be careful with that. This right here is letting you know that there's a pedestrian crossing on the street. This one right here you may see on your test. This is your narrow bridge sign. It lets you know that the bridge is more narrow than the road you're on, and proceed with caution when crossing over. Let's see here. This sign right here, you'll see this sign near guardrails. So anytime you're about to go cross a bridge or an overpass of some kind, you'll see a guardrail, and right before the guardrail you'll see this sign right here. It lets you know where the guardrail begins, so that way you have a good idea of where that guardrail is going to be as you approach that bridge. Okay, bumps, again, bump is opposite of a dip. There's a rise in the road ahead. Slow down and avoid an uncomfortable jolt. Okay, this right here lets you know there's a stop sign up ahead. All right, good to know. That way you're not missing out on stop sign. A lot of people run stop signs because of the fact they're not paying attention and they don't see it. Well, this will give you even more warning that up ahead there's a stop sign, so that way you're prepared for it. All right, regulatory and warning signs. All right, obviously the stop sign is very important. Many of you have been passengers your whole life. You know what a stop sign means. You know what it looks like. So this is going to be very easy for you. You don't need to take notes on this. But if you don't know what a stop sign means, this right here is what a stop sign looks like. It means stop at a red stop sign with white letters or a yellow sign with black letters. The stop sign means come to a complete stop, yield to pedestrians or other vehicles, and then proceed carefully. Stop before the crosswalk, intersection, or stop sign. This applies to each vehicle that comes to the sign. Slowing down is not adequate. All right, so anytime you come to a stop sign, you got to stop at the stop line. If there is no stop line visible, your entire vehicle must be behind at the pole of the stop sign for you to adequately stop at that stop sign. All right, this one right here, speed advisory sign. All right, now this is the curve sign. We talked about that earlier. Now underneath it says 35 miles per hour. This is what we call a speed advisory sign. All right, this lets you know how slow you need to get your car down to in order to maneuver that curve without losing control of your vehicle or going off into the ditch or whatever it is you're curving around. Okay, there's a thing called inertia. The only thing to overcome inertia is through slowing down, and that's it. All right, do not pass zone. Basically, it lets you know that this is not an area in which you can get to your left and pass other vehicles. Slow traffic, keep right. You may see this on your test. Everything you need to know about this sign is in the sign itself. So if you're on the interstate and you see people passing you on the right, well, that means you're going too slow in the left-hand lane, and you want to go ahead and get into the right-hand lane because you're going slower than the rest of traffic. So even if the rest of traffic is speeding and you're going slower than them, you go ahead and just move over to the right and keep right. Okay. Speed limit sign, you're going to see this often out there on the roadways. Whatever that number means, that is the fastest you can go. So speed limit 55, you cannot go faster than 55. Now, If it's an adverse condition like rain or snow or fog or things of that nature, you need to go slower than the speed limit. And you can actually get in trouble for going too fast in an adverse condition, even though the speed limit may be 55. Okay, do not enter. This is something you may see on your actual test. Do not enter, basically, you can't go straight, and of course you can't go backwards on a one-way. So basically, you need to be prepared to either turn left or right when seeing this sign. So when you see that question on your test, the proper answer choice is be prepared to either turn left or right when seeing this sign, because you can't continue to go forward. Yield signs. Yield means that you must allow others the right of way. They have the right to occupy that space before you. So this sign tells you that the road you're on joins with another road ahead. You should slow down or stop if necessary, so you can yield the right of way to vehicles, pedestrians, or bicycles already on the other road. All right, this is the school speed limit sign. You want to make sure where it says cell phone use is prohibited, fine $200. Here in Texas, having a cell phone in your hand in a school zone, well, having a cell phone in your hand period is against the law. So this is a little bit outdated. So you never want to be on your cell phone anyways when you're in a school zone. You want to make sure you have your full attention when driving in a school zone. This right here, this flashing yellow light, school zone, you got to slow down. 20 miles per hour is the fastest you can go. Okay, let's see here. Another sign you may see is this one right here, form 1 line left. You may find that on your test. Instructs drivers that all traffic on the same roadway must merge into one lane. Okay. All right, guide signs. All right, so this one right here, Texas 235. It's a Texas route marker sign that tells you that the road you're on or will be traveling on. Plan your trip and know which road you want to take. Now, I want you to go ahead and pay attention to the numbers here. Interstate 22. Okay, so it's an even number. Even numbers go east and west. Odd numbers go north and south. So 235 would be north and south. 22 would be east and west, because a 2, 5. Odd numbers a 5, even numbers a 2, and therefore it'll tell you what direction you're going. So same thing right here, loop 270. It lets you know that you're on a short state highway in a city or urban area. All right, this right here, railroad crossing, it's circular in nature, right? And lets you know there's a railroad crossing up ahead. And this one right here is a railroad crossbuck. All right, railroad crossbuck signs are posted at every railroad, highway, road, and street grade crossing and show the location of the train tracks. If more than one track is to be crossed, the sign will show the number of tracks. Always slow down, look, listen, and be prepared to yield the right of way to an approaching train. All right. Gate, flashing light. This you'll also see at a railroad crossing. If you live in a city, you'll see this more often than not at most railroad crossings. If you live out in a rural area, you'll see these instead. But luckily here in the city we have these right here, because with all the city noise it sometimes may be hard to hear a train coming. So this right here will definitely give us a warning to stop and let that train pass. All right, now pavement markings. Okay, a lot of people have questions about, can I pass, can I not pass? Is this a one-way, a two-way? Well, the pavement markings on the road will tell you everything you need to know. So anytime you see a yellow line, it lets you know that the line that the two lanes that it separates are going in opposite directions. If you see a white line, it lets you know that the two lanes that it separates are going in the same direction. Now, if it's dotted, like this one here, it means that you are permitted to cross over and change lanes or use it to pass another vehicle. So this one right here is a white line. They're all going in the same direction. They're all able to use these different lanes to get access to. Now this one right here is yellow. All right, so even though yellow means you have this lane going in opposing direction of this lane, but if this lane is clear and this car wants to use this lane to pass another vehicle that may be right there, they're able to do that. Okay, so it means passing is permitted. But the yellow just simply signifies that it is a two-way road, or the two lanes are two different directions. Now a lot of people say, well, what about the solid white line on a shoulder? Well, the solid white line on the shoulder just signifies that solid white line means that that shoulder is not for through traffic. It's not a lane. Okay, it's only for emergency purposes only. It's only for stopping for emergency situations and emergency vehicles. All right, it's not a lane in which you can drive in. All right. So turn lane, you'll have this right here. Anytime you utilize a turn lane, okay, in order to turn into a business or anything else, is you want to be able to get into that turn lane closest to the turn as possible. So if you're within 100 feet of a turn, go ahead and get into that turn lane and then progress with your turn following the right-of-way rules, making sure that it's clear and you're yielding the right-of-way to oncoming traffic. Okay. Multi-lane highways, 4 lanes or more, you'll see the double solid yellow line. It's letting you know that these 2 lanes are going in the same direction, that white line. But on the left-hand side, you have a solid yellow line. Solid yellow line means you are not allowed to cross over and pass, right? So same thing with this side. On their left-hand side, they have a solid yellow line. That means they cannot cross over and pass. And the reason that is because they have another lane that they can utilize going in the same direction, okay? Solid and broken lanes. In this situation, okay, there may be certain scenarios where one side can pass and the other side can't. Well, if one side is approaching a curve, a hill, a tunnel, an intersection, all these different scenarios in which vision is affected, your side will have a solid line letting you know that it's not safe for you to pass. The other side may have a dotted line allowing them to pass, simply the fact that they're coming out of a curve, they're coming over the hill, they've already went through the intersection. Okay, so you'll see those different things as you go out there on the road. All right, crosswalks look like this. Okay, sometimes they'll even have the little dashes going this way, so that you know that pedestrians are allowed to cross. This right here is the white stop line. Now the stop line is fairly thick. Okay, it's fairly thick. You want to stop behind it. Even if it's a solid white line before, and you also have a crosswalk, you'll have a stop line and then the crosswalk. So you got to be prepared for that. So solid lines mean there is no passing. We talked about that. All right, barrels. Barrels are placed in areas where there are deviations of the road. So if it goes off to the right one way and it continues straight on the other, this right here is a safety feature. In case you do lose control or you do hit it, it's less likely to cause serious major damage on your part because they're filled with water or sand. Hearing impaired, construction and maintenance devices, and construction signs. All right, notice how they're all orange. All right, when they're orange, it means you're in a construction zone. All right, and each sign tells you exactly what it is it's trying to convey about that construction zone. All right, so detours, a lot of times we'll see this when we're out there in our neighborhoods and doing construction on our roads. We'll see a detour on how to get around that construction and back to the road that we were on. Okay, channeling devices, if you see this right here, it means it's blocked off. All right, so passing traffic, diagonal stripes on the barricade or vertical panel guide the driver towards the direction to where the traffic is to pass. Okay, pass to the right, stripes sloping downward to the right means the driver should bear to the right. Pass to the left, stripes sloping downward to the left means the driver should bear to the left. All right, flashing arrows will basically tell you what direction you need to move into. Flag person, these people hold up either a flag or a sign letting you know what you should do in those situations, either be stop or slow down, or you can proceed. Okay, this right here, slow moving emblem, you'll see these on tractors, especially if you're out there and they're mowing the grass on the side of the road. They'll get onto the road for a brief moment to get back to where they're going, but when you see this triangle, this orange triangle, okay, it just lets you know that it's going to be a slow moving vehicle and it doesn't go any faster than 25 miles per hour. All right, so before we go into chapter 6, let's go ahead and look at chapter 5 questions. All right, so the questions for chapter 5 are going to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17, 37, 38, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 57, 61, 65, and 74. I'll go ahead and give you some time to work on those questions now. Go ahead and pause the video, work on those questions. When you're done and ready to move forward, go ahead and hit play. All right, so let's go ahead and start Chapter 6. Chapter 6 deals with signaling, passing, and turning. All right, so signaling, and of course, anytime you get behind the wheel in the car, you have your turn signals. But anytime those turn signals don't work, you could also use your arms. Okay, and we're going to be going over that in this chapter. So signaling, a good driver always lets others know if he or she is going to turn or stop. Signaling communicates your intentions when the driver helps other drivers around you to plan ahead. So basically, it lets everybody around you know what your intentions are. A surprise move often results in a crash. Always be alert, watch for others, and give signals for your movements. Always signal when you are going to 1. Change lanes, 2. Make a turn, 3. Pull away from a parking space parallel to the curb, 4. Slow down or stop, 5. Enter or leave a highway, 6. Pull over to the side of the road. So how to signal? Okay. You may either use a turn signal light or hand and arm signals. If using hand signals, extend your arm, hand, and arm well out of the car window as shown below. Always make sure your signals can be easily seen by others and signal in plenty of time. Hand and arm signals are usually difficult to see during non-daylight hours, so it is important to make sure your signal lights are working properly. When signaling a stop, pump your brakes a few times to attract their attention. Signal continuously for at least 100 feet before turning or stopping, and be sure to turn off your signal lights once your turn is complete. Your unintended signal still means turn to other drivers. So if you're changing lanes, you must turn on your blinker the moment you know you need to change lanes. If you want to turn at an intersection or on a street or a side road or a driveway, you must signal at least 100 feet prior to your turn. Okay, so turns, you must signal at least 100 feet prior to your turn. All right, so passing. You want to keep to the right. Never drive on the left side of the road when, all right, 1. Pavement markings or signs prohibit driving on the left, such as a no pass zone. 2. There are 2 or more traffic lanes in each direction. 3. Within 100 feet of a crossing at an intersection or road crossing. 4. On a hill, curve, or any other place when vision is limited. 5. Within 100 feet of a bridge, viaduct, or a tunnel. Always keep to the right side of the road except when 1. Passing another vehicle on a 2 or 3 lane street. 2. Driving on a one-way street. And 3. The right side of the road is blocked. Basic safety rules when you are passing. If it is not always safe to pass, be patient and wait until the time is right. Crashes resulting from improper passing often result in a head-on crashes and can be deadly. All right, so make certain the way is clear. Give the proper signal before changing lanes. Tap your horn when necessary to avoid surprising the driver ahead. Avoid cutting in too quickly if you must return to your original lane. Okay, so you always want to keep to the right and don't pass anytime you're within 100 feet of a hill, curve, or anything where vision is limited. All right, so we kind of talked about that earlier. You always want to make sure that you're safe. When you do take a pass on the left, you always want to make sure it's clear. You want to make sure that you properly signal before changing lanes. And then when getting back into the lane, one of the better ways to know whether or not you're not cutting somebody off is you can see their entire vehicle in your rear view mirror. So as you pass that other vehicle from on your right, you're going to keep going straight until you can see their entire vehicle in your rear view mirror. Now, of course, if there's an oncoming car and you must turn abruptly in order to avoid a head-on collision, that's understandable. However, if everything is clear and you pass them safely, you go ahead and make sure you see them in your rear view mirror before turning it back into your lane. That way you're not cutting them off. All right. Here it shows how to pass somebody on the left, okay, on a 2-lane road. All right, so keep enough distance between you and the car in front of you so they can see ahead clearly. Check the rearview mirror, your side mirrors, and look over your shoulder and your blind spot to make sure the roadway is clear and no other vehicles are passing you. turn on your left turn signal to alert any drivers behind you. Okay, so this is what we call smog, S-M-O-G. You want to signal, check your mirrors, look over your shoulder or your blind spot, and if everything is clear, you go ahead and go. And that's how you change lanes safely. And then proceed to pass the person in which you're trying to pass. All right, so passing on the right. In Texas, you can pass on the right only when conditions permit you to do so safely. All right, the road is clear on the road is clear of parked vehicles or other lane obstructions and is wide enough for 2 or more lanes in each direction. 2, you're on a one-way road. 3, you may pass on a paved shoulder when the vehicle you are passing is slowing or stopping on the main traveled portion of the highway, disabled, or preparing to make a left turn. All right, so if someone in front of you is making a left turn, then you can pass them on the right. When another vehicle is passing, do not increase your speed. So when you're on the road and somebody's passing you on the left-hand side, these are the things that you should do. Okay, you do not want to increase your speed. You want to stay in your lane, safely move as far to the right as you can when being passed on the left hand of the lanes are not marked. And 4, make it as safe and easy as possible for the other driver to pass you. So what I usually do is I'll maybe even slow down a little bit, give them even more space, allow them to move past me even better. That way they're not in the opposing side of traffic for too long. Okay, let's see here. Turning. Turning a corner appears to be a simple operation. However, many crashes and confusions in traffic are caused by drivers who do not turn properly. All right, refer to the diagram showing a correct method of making a right and left turns. There are 7 steps in making a safe turn. All right, 1, decide before you go into the turning point. Never make a last-minute turn. It is dangerous, right? So 100 feet before the turn, have your blinker on. Make sure everybody around you knows what you're doing. You're prepared to make the turn. Don't make a turn hastily. So if you see where you need to be at the last second, don't slam on your brakes and turn real quick. That's just that's too dangerous of a situation. 2, look behind in both ways to see where other vehicles are before you change lanes. 3, move into the proper lane as soon as possible. The faster the traffic is moving, the sooner you should move into the proper lane. If you cannot go into the proper lane within 1/2 block before turning, do not turn and continue straight ahead. Right? So you want to be in the proper lane well in advance before you ever decide to make that turn. All right, 4, give proper turn signal at least 100 feet before you turn. If using a hand signal, hold that signal until you are close enough to the intersections for others to know your intentions. Do not hold the signal while making your turn. You need both hands in order to turn the wheel. Okay, and you're going to be learning that in your class, the hand-over-hand turning. 5, slow down to a reasonable speed prior to making the turn. Don't use the brake or a clutch while turning. To properly execute the turn, stay in the proper turn lane at all times. Make the turn correctly. This will be easy if you are in the proper lane and proceeding slowly enough at the time you begin to turn. Finish the turn in the proper lane. So that's basically how you make a proper turn. Notice here, this is an incorrect turn. All right, you don't want to go around somebody that's taking too slow of a turn. You just stay behind them, stay in the proper lane, don't turn incorrectly. Okay, making a left-hand turn, you want to make sure you're in the proper lane well before you get into that turn. Also, when you turn, you always want to turn into the lane closest to you. Okay, so if you're turning right, turn into the right-hand lane. If you're turning left, okay, you're going to turn into the lane closest to you, so that way you avoid any type of trouble. All right. Let's go ahead and look at the questions from Chapter 6 before moving on to Chapter 7. All right, so for Chapter 6, the questions you're going to need to go over is 24, 25, 63, and 64. I'll give you about 5-10 minutes to work on those questions now. Go ahead and feel free to pause the video, and when you're done with the questions, you can hit play. All right, so Chapter 7 talks about parking, stopping, and standing. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the different variations of what you need to know when stopping and parking your vehicle. All right, so do not park, stop, or stand a vehicle in the following situations. 1, on the road side of any vehicle stopped or parked at the edge of the curb of a street. 2, on a sidewalk or a crosswalk. You don't want to stop on a sidewalk or crosswalk. 3, within an intersection. You don't want to be anywhere within 20 to 30 feet of an intersection when parking. All right, between a safety zone and adjacent curb or within 30 feet of a place on a curb immediately opposite of the end of the safety zone. Alongside or opposite of any street excavation or obstruction when stopping, standing, or parking when parking would obstruct traffic, on a bridge or other elevated structure, or on a highway within a highway tunnel, on a railroad track, obviously, and or any place where an official sign prohibits stopping. Okay. Do not park or stand a vehicle, whether occupied or not. Do not park or allow a vehicle to stand idle in front of a public or private driveway. So you cannot block other people's driveways. Within 15 feet of a fire hydrant. Okay, if a fire breaks out and your car is right there by the fire hydrant, your car is going to get ruined. 3, within 20 feet of a crosswalk at an intersection. 4, within 30 feet of an upon approach to any flashing signal, stop sign, yield sign, or any traffic signal located at the side of the road. So this is very important. So if you ever buy a house in a neighborhood and it's right at the corner and there's a stop sign to that corner, well, from that stop sign for 30 feet straight down, there is no parking. So in front of your own house, it's a no parking zone for 30 feet near that stop sign at that intersection. So kind of consider that one before buying a house. 5, within 20 feet of a driveway entrance to any fire station or on the side or street opposite to an entrance of a fire station within 75 feet of the entrance. At any place where an official sign prohibits parking or standing. All right, so do not park a vehicle, occupied or not, within 50 feet of the nearest railroad or crossing. So when you talk about 15 or 50, if you're stopping at a railroad, you got to be within 15 feet or 15 feet away. You got to be at least 15 feet away from the railroad when stopping, either to let the train tracks go or if you're at a signal light. But if you're parking, you can't park any closer than 50 feet to a railroad. So that's very important. So if you see that on a test, the answers would be 15 and 50. Those would be the stopping and parking distances for cars near railroad tracks. Okay. Do not park a vehicle at any place where an official sign prohibits the parking. Let's see here. You always want to leave plenty of room to pass. Anytime you park, be sure your vehicle can be seen for at least 200 feet from either direction. If at night, use your parking lights or leave your headlights on dim. All right, those are emergency type situations. A person may stop, stand, or park a bicycle on a sidewalk if the bicycle does not impede the normal or reasonable movement of a pedestrian. Okay, so you don't want to park your bike on a sidewalk in a manner that keeps people from walking down that sidewalk. And of course, disabled parking, you must have a handicap sticker in order to park in a disabled parking space. So just be wary of that. All right, so if you don't have a disabled parking sticker, don't park there. If you feel like you need to park there because you are disabled, then get that disabled parking sticker so you don't have any issues in getting tickets. Okay. Parking on hills. All right. You want to turn your wheels to the curb. All right. If there's, if you're going downhill. If you are going uphill, you want to turn your wheels away from the curb. Okay. So if there is no curb, you turn your wheels to the right when there is no curb. The reason that is because if there is a curb and you're going uphill, you turn your tires to the left. If your braking mechanism were to fail and you start rolling backwards, that curb is going to act as a brake for you. Same thing with there is no curb and you turn your wheels to the right. Basically, if your parking mechanism fails, it's going to take that car and it's going to take it in a direction to where it goes into that shoulder area and not into the street or down the road where it could possibly hurt other people. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the questions for Chapter 7 real quick. So Chapter 7 questions, you're going to need to know 4, 21, 42, and 60. I'll go ahead and give you about 5-10 minutes to work on that. Go ahead and hit pause while you work on those questions. Once you're done, go ahead and hit the play button. So Chapter 8 talks about speeds and speed limits. Okay, so we're going to go over that real quick. Now also, you'll notice on this page right here, you have a braking chart. So go ahead and take notice of that braking chart. Take a quick screenshot of it. You may see it on your test when it comes to stopping distances. So it's a good idea to know this little chart right here. Keep it in the back of your mind. All right. So this is how the braking chart works. All right. So approximate stopping distance. It takes the average person 1.5 seconds to think. Now that 1.5 seconds is your reaction time. Okay. So the moment you see danger, it takes about 1.5 seconds for you to react to that danger. So the moment you notice it, you got to send a signal from your brain to your foot to hit that brake. That takes roughly 1.5 seconds. Now, the older you are, the longer it may take. So try to adjust as you age what your reaction time may be. All right, so react and apply the brakes. So the following table shows how far you travel in that 1.5 seconds plus how many feet you'll travel while skidding to a stop. So here you'll see, let's talk about 20 miles per hour, going 20 miles per hour. This is your speed. And you'll see two numbers on the inside of this little bar graph right here. So the first number is your reaction feet distance. All right, so your reaction time, 1.5 seconds. It's going to take roughly 44 feet for that 1.5 seconds going 20 miles per hour. And then once you hit the brake with your foot, it's going to take an additional 19 feet to skid to a stop. And here, right here on the outside of the bar graph, you'll see 63 feet total stopping distance. Okay, so on your test, if you see a question that asks you about total stopping distance, which includes reaction time and braking, the proper answer would be 63 feet when going 20 miles per hour. If it just asks you for your braking distance outside of reaction time, the answer would be 19 feet. Okay, so very important to be aware of that. All right, so and the same is true for going all the way down, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. Notice that 70 miles per hour, it takes longer than a football field to stop. So you definitely need to practice safe following distance when you're out there on the road. You know, because when it comes to things like that causes accidents, speed is by far the #1 cause of accidents out there. The faster you go, the less time you have, or the less distance you have in order to react. You know, the less you have to brake. So the faster you go, the more distance you're going to need in order to react and brake safely in order to avoid a hazard. So speeding is the #1 cause of accidents out there. And of course, #2 is following too closely. So you definitely don't want to follow too closely to somebody. You need that space, you need that distance. So if you look at this braking chart here, you can get a good idea of exactly how much space you're going to need in order to come to complete stop when you're going these different miles per hour. Okay, so speed limits. We're all aware of speed limits. You see speed limit signs out there all the time. However, there are speed limits even if you don't see a speed limit sign. Okay, so anytime you're in an urban district, right, that means a neighborhood, the speed limit, if you don't see a speed limit sign, is by default 30 miles per hour. If you're on an alley or a beach or a county road adjacent to a public beach, it's going to be 15 miles per hour, even if you don't see a speed limit sign. If you're out there on a highway, okay, or a freeway, interstate, out there in Texas, if you're outside of city limits, it's 70 miles per hour. If you're within city limits, a lot of times it'll be around 65 miles per hour. So here in Houston, right? So, and of course, what type of vehicle you drive, you also may have different speed limits that you have to abide by. So, of course, school buses can't go as fast as regular cars. So just know that there are speed limits that are by default. But of course, if it is faster, it'll be posted, right? So they do allow for faster speed limits in Texas. I've seen speed limits as high as 85 miles per hour on a toll road outside of San Antonio. I've seen speed limits at 75 miles per hour. So wherever it's posted and you see it clearly, then that is the speed limit. But if it's not posted, then know that under these circumstances, these are by default the speed limit. Okay, so you still got to be within those guidelines. All right, street racing. Street racing, of course, we already talked about slow down, move over, 20 miles per hour. So you pass an emergency vehicle, move over to the left if possible. Street racing, of course, is illegal in Texas. I encourage you to use a racetrack, Alamo Speedway, and other places that you can go to that allow you to race your vehicle on an actual regulated track. But do not use public roads as a racing arena for you and your friends. It is against the law. Okay, a person may not participate in a race, a vehicle speed competition or contest, a drag race or acceleration contest, a test of physical endurance of the operator of the vehicle, in connection with a drag race or exhibition of a vehicle speed or acceleration, or to make a speed record. The criminal penalty for conviction of speed racing ranges from a Class B misdemeanor to a second-degree felony. Okay, so it's a serious situation. People lose their lives. It's not worth it. You're at a stoplight. Somebody revs their engine. There's no point in racing. Trust me, only bad things can happen. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at those Chapter 8 questions real quick. All right, so for Chapter 8 questions, we're going to be going over 18, 20, 22, 23, 43, 59, and 62. I'll go ahead and give you about 10-15 minutes to work on those questions. Feel free to hit the pause button. Once you're done with those questions, go ahead and resume and hit play. All right, so Chapter 9 goes over some special driving situations. There's always going to be a lot of driving situations that you got to be aware of. However, we're going to go over some very important ones that are crucial when you're out there on the road. So when we're talking about headlights, okay, anytime you're out there, you know, and you put on your headlights, there are certain laws that you got to follow in the state of Texas. When do you have to put on your headlights? All right, it says right here, you must use your headlights beginning 30 minutes after sunset and ending 30 minutes before sunrise. So right when the sun sets, you have this period of twilight that lasts for about 30 minutes. So during that period of twilight, for 30 minutes, once it gets dark, you turn on your headlights. It's required by law. Right now, 30 minutes before sunrise, again, you have twilight in which you're allowed to turn off your lights. But in order to be safe, I always encourage my students to always drive with their headlights on, even in the middle of the daytime. It allows other cars to see you better. It's a safety feature. It's something that that can help keep you out of an accident. So best bet is to go ahead and use that daytime running light switch on your light switch and just keep your lights on every time you get behind the wheel. You know, so that way it's always you're always going to be safe. Now, using low beam and high beam headlights. Low beam headlights are usually used within a city. You want to use your low beams in fog. You want to use your low beams in rain. You don't want to use your high beams in those type of situations because, one, you could blind other drivers. Two, if you're in a fog situation, you're going to blind yourself. Same thing in rain. It's not going to provide any more visibility for you. In fact, it's going to hinder your visibility with glare. So you got to be very careful, okay? So anytime you're actually driving on the roadway and you're using your high beam headlights out in a rural area, that means outside of a major city where lights are not visible, you want to make sure that you want to turn it off within 500 feet of an approaching vehicle. All right, so that way you're not blinding them. And of course, when you're approaching a curve, that way you're not blinding anybody going into the curve, okay? We're going to move down here to fighting highway hypnosis, okay? This is something you may see on your test. Highway hypnosis is basically when you've been driving a long time, you're taking a long road trip, and basically everything looks the same. So what you want to do is you want to take a break at least every 2 hours or every 100 miles. Okay, very important. You want to get out of your car, walk around, allow your muscles to relax. Okay, so right here, controlling a car in a special situation, steering out of a skid. All right, this is right here is a diagram of how to get out of a skid. All right, anytime your car goes into a skid, now of course you want to avoid getting in situations where your car does skid. That way, you know, the best way to do that is slowing down. But if you do find yourself in a skid, the first thing you want to do is take your foot off the gas and then turn into the direction of the skid. So if the back end of your vehicle is going to the right, you're going to go ahead and turn that wheel towards the right or in the direction of the road that you're trying to drive down in order to get out of that skid. So by taking your foot off the gas, your car is naturally going to slow down, and it's going to have less inertia on your vehicle. You'll have more control of it, and you'll be able to get out of that skid. You don't want to slam on your brakes, and you don't want to jerk the wheel too abruptly. You want to do it smoothly and easily. Take your foot off the gas and turn into the direction of the skid. Okay, so that's how you get out of a skid. Flat tire blowout. Okay, a flat tire or blowout will blow out. The difference between a blowout and flat tire is a flat tire is caused by a hole that leaks air. A blowout is when your entire tire basically explodes, allowing basically getting all the air out of the tire instantaneously. So in these situations, you do not want to hit the brakes suddenly or hard. Take your foot off the gas pedal and gently apply the brakes, and then you want to steer straight ahead to a stop. Okay. Driving downhill, always throw it into a lower gear, especially if it's a steep hill. That way it puts less pressure on your transmission. Okay. Another one we're going to talk about, of course, is distracted driving, all right, which is a major problem here in Texas and everywhere else in the United States, especially with teenagers and novice drivers. Okay, distracted driving is not just texting while driving. It's anything that takes your eyes off the road, anything that takes attention away from the task of driving. These are what we call distractions, and it can be anything from, let's see here, from texting, from looking at your cell phone, playing with the CD player or the radio, looking at your GPS, a number of things that can keep your eyes off the road. Now, if you're in my teen class, we're going to have a whole discussion about distracted driving. But if you're in an adult class, just simply know that the task of driving needs your attention. So passengers in the car trying to have conversations with you, distractions outside your vehicle that may turn your eyes away from the road, either it be a scenery or something else, or rubbernecking, seeing an accident, things inside your vehicle such as pets, the radio, the GPS, your cell phone, all these things are considered a distraction. You want to minimize these distractions at all costs, and anytime you're driving, try to focus on the task at hand, which is driving. Now, if your phone rings or you hear your text message go off, if you really need to look at your phone, go ahead and pull off the road into a safe area, and then proceed to use your phone in that manner. But don't do it while you're driving, because it is very dangerous. And in fact, it's so dangerous, it is now considered one of the leading causes of accidents, greater than that of DWIs, driving while intoxicated. So this is a real problem out there on the roadways. So avoid distracted driving, okay? And then texting while driving. And you're going to have to watch the impact video. The impact video is something you're going to have to watch before taking your road test. So if you're in my adult class, this is a video you're going to be watching fairly soon. If you're in my teen class, you're not going to watch this video for about another 5 to 6 months. Once you do watch it, it's good for 90 days. But it talks all about distracted driving and the consequences of distracted driving. So let's go ahead and look at Chapter 9 questions, and we'll move on to Chapter 10. All right, so Chapter 9 questions include 28, 29, 32, 33, 39, 68, 69, 70, 71, 82. All right, so right now we're going to be talking about Chapter 10, okay, which is alcohol and drug and the impact on one's ability to drive. Now, several questions from your knowledge test will be exclusively from Chapter 10, dealing with drugs and alcohol. So it's real important that you pay attention to this one. Any drug may affect a person's ability to drive. Millions of people take over-the-counter and prescription medications, illegal drugs, or drink alcohol and do not realize they may affect the mental and physical skills necessary to operate a vehicle or to react to external events while driving a vehicle. Each individual is different. Driving skills of persons taking the same drug may be affected differently. A driver's body weight, emotional state, amount of drugs taken, and when the drug was taken will influence the driver's ability to assess an emergency situation or judge speed and distance. Safe driving always requires an observant eye, a steady hand, and a clear head. When a person drinks alcohol or uses drugs, one of the first effects is they lose their judgment and their sight is impaired, causing slower reactions to sound and inability to judge another vehicle's speed. A person's ability to reason can all but disappear. Good judgment may be as simple as saying no to a friend who wants to race their car. However, if a person has been drinking alcohol or they are under the influence of drugs, their judgment may turn into, sure, take my car. Taking more than one drug at the same time is even more dangerous, since drugs may have a different overall cumulative effect, especially when alcohol is involved. Besides escalating the overall effects of the other drugs, alcohol can also mask the effects of those drugs, increasing a person's risk of poor decision-making and or slowing responsive reactions to situations. You should always check with a doctor or pharmacist before taking more than one type of drug or mixing drugs, especially tranquilizers and sedatives. So, Table 27 talks about alcohol and other types of drugs. All right, so marijuana. This may be on your test. Marijuana, research has shown, affects concentration, judgment, sensory, and perceptual skills for careful driving. So remember that about marijuana. It affects judgment, concentration, sensory, and perceptual skills. All right, you have stimulants. All right, heavy amphetamine use may keep drivers awake and active for long periods of time. So taking things like caffeine pills or things that boost energy, things of that nature. Truckers sometimes try to take things like, very strong coffee or stimulant pills that allows them to stay awake longer. But at the same time, it may increase their chances of actually getting into a wreck. Okay, so stimulants is not the best thing to take when you're out there driving. If you're too tired to drive, the best remedy for that is sleep. Tranquilizers and sedatives. Okay, these things are what make you more relaxed and more sleepy and more calm. They definitely affect your reaction time and your muscle reaction time, so you definitely don't want to be driving when taking any of these things. Any drug, basically any drug that's over the counter, so any drug may affect your ability to drive. If you take more than one drug, or if you mix drugs, especially tranquilizers or other sedatives, hypnotics with alcohol, you could be asking for trouble on the road and off. If you have doubts about a drug or drug mixing, check with your doctor or pharmacist. Okay. Now, alcohol. This may be on your test, so pay attention. Each year, alcohol, a depressant drug affecting coordination, remember that, alcohol affects coordination, judgment, perception, and emotional state, is responsible for a significant number of highway deaths. Alcohol increases the depressant effects of tranquilizers and barbiturates. Mixing these drugs on and off the road can be hazardous. All right, so number one killer is alcohol. All right, I think in 2018 the number one killer got turned to texting while driving, but yes, alcohol is definitely right up there in terms of auto accidents out there on the road. So driving while intoxicated, DWI, is a problem affecting all Texans. Okay, so even though you may not drink and drive, other people out there on the road are drinking and driving, and so therefore it affects everybody. According to the calendar of year 2014, Texas motor vehicle traffic crash highlights, 1,041 persons were killed in a motor vehicle traffic crash with a driver under the influence of alcohol. Alcohol-related crashes represent 29%, okay, of total number of persons killed in a motor vehicle traffic crashes. That's a pretty high number. So imagine if everybody were to be responsible with alcohol, we could literally cut deaths out there in traffic by a third. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the leading cause of death for U.S. teens in motor vehicle crashes in 2011, approximately 2,650 teens between 16 and 19 were killed, and almost 292,000 were treated in emergency departments for injuries suffered in motor vehicle crashes. That means 7 teens aged 16 to 19 died every day from motor vehicle injuries. That's a pretty high number. The number one cause of death for teenagers is not heart disease, it's not cancer, it is auto accidents. So getting out there behind that wheel, you got to be very responsible and be a very good driver and know the laws and know the rules when you're out there on the road. In 2013, Texas had the highest number of alcohol-impaired driving fatalities in the United States, and 17% of drivers aged 16 to 20 involved in fatal crashes had a blood alcohol concentration, or BAC, of 0.08 or higher. Not all teens involved in fatal crashes were drinking. Some were passengers or innocent victims of people who drink and drive. Maybe one of those injured or killed was a family member or your best friend. It could have been you. To make Texas safer, the Texas legislature enacted laws to deter people from drinking and driving by penalizing those who choose to drink and drive. In Texas, a person is considered legally intoxicated if their BAC is 0.08 or more. Driving while intoxicated, also known as DWI, and driving under the influence of alcohol, or in terms of drugs, also driving under the influence of alcohol by a minor if you have any detectable amount, but a DUI considers to drugs in most situations for adults. Arrests can be humiliating experience and are costly. Some fines range as high as $10,000, not including the cost of bail, bondsman, attorney, or any other court-related expenses. Is it worth the risk? And the short answer is no, it's not worth the risk. Open containers. Now this deals with if you have a beer inside your car or any other type of alcohol inside your vehicle, it cannot be an open container. It cannot be out in the open. Back in the old days when I was a kid, open container was legal. However, in Texas today, in 2020, it is not legal. So you cannot have an open beer container inside your car. Let's see here. It is illegal to possess or open a container of alcohol in a motor vehicle passenger area located on a public highway, regardless of whether the vehicle is being operated, stopped, or parked. So even if you're parked on the street and you have an open container inside your vehicle, that is illegal. Conviction of this offense is punishable by a fine not to exceed $500. Myths about drinking alcohol. Taking cold showers, drinking black coffee, or exercising will not make a person sober. Only time can. All right. About 90% of all the alcohol you drink is basically neutralized by your liver. Okay, so your liver has to make an enzyme in order to neutralize that alcohol. So the only way to actually get that alcohol out of your system or neutralized in your system is through time and the use of your liver. And there's a number of different things that will affect how long it's going to take. So from anything from your body weight, the number of drinks that you did in a certain amount of time, and whether or not you took food when drinking the alcohol. It takes about 1 hour for your body to rid itself of each drink consumed. If a person has been drinking, someone who has not been drinking should drive. All right, Texas is tough on alcohol-related laws for minors, so zero tolerance for minors. All right, so if you're in my teen class or if you're in my adult class and you're under the age of 21, this will be for you. According to the Texas Alcohol Beverage Code, a minor is any individual who is under the age of 21 years of age. A minor may not purchase, attempt to purchase, consume, or possess an alcoholic beverage. Since a minor should not possess alcohol, Texas passed zero tolerance legislation for minors who commit an offense under the non-driving alcohol-related laws and for minors who drive under the influence. Zero tolerance means just that, even if a minor is not intoxicated as defined under the DWI statute, but has any detectable amount of alcohol in his or her system while operating a motor vehicle in a public place or while operating a watercraft, the minor committed the criminal offense of driving under the influence of alcohol by a minor. So see Table 31. All right, so penalties for non-driving alcohol-related offenses by minors. Okay, so this means even though you're not driving, if you're in possession of alcohol, you're going to be in that penalty. So even though you're not driving, so if you go to a party, either college party or high school party, and alcohol is being served, and you find yourself with an alcoholic beverage, you'll be a minor in possession, and you could lose your license simply for that. All right, so implied consent laws. All right, so a minor implies their consent to take one or more breath or blood specimen for analysis if they are arrested for operating a motor vehicle or watercraft in a public place while intoxicated, or if there is any detectable or noticeable amount of alcohol in their system while operating a motor vehicle in a public place as deemed by an officer. The breath of alcohol specimen will determine if alcohol is present in their body. It will also identify the amount of alcohol in their system. Additionally, the breath or blood specimen can identify the presence of any and all controlled substances or drugs. Okay, so if you have any detectable amount of alcohol whatsoever inside your bloodstream, you would be charged with a DUIA, driving under the influence of alcohol by a minor. Okay, so and then also for the non-driving alcohol-related offense, it's a Class E misdemeanor and a fine up to $500. So if you see that on your test, what would the fine be? $500. Okay. Penalties for refusal to provide a specimen. First offense, you have your license suspended for 180 days. Second offense, you'd have it suspended up to 2 years. Okay. Minor provided specimen confirming detectable amount of alcohol. First offense, your driver's license is suspended for 60 days. Second offense, 120 days. Third offense, 180 days. Penalties for driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs by minors. It's a Class C misdemeanor, punishable fine up to $500. So remember that, $500. And penalties for driving while intoxicated. That means a BAC of 0.08 or more. Okay. So what is the law in Texas? 0.08 blood alcohol content. That's what BAC stands for, blood alcohol content. DWI stands for driving while intoxicated. So what is intoxicated? Anything 0.08 or higher is considered intoxicated in the state of Texas. So, what are the penalties? A Class B misdemeanor, punishable by a fine not to exceed $2,000, up to 180 days in jail, and of course, a suspension of your license up to a year. Okay, so it doesn't pay to drink. Drinking doesn't make you cool. Doing drugs doesn't make you cool. And if you enjoy your ability to drive and get around, you definitely wouldn't violate these laws. Okay. So, implied consent laws for adults. The implied consent for adults is similar to that of minors. Like a minor, an adult implies that consent to take one or more breath or blood specimen for analysis if they are arrested for operating a motor vehicle or watercraft in a public place while intoxicated, or if they are an adult up to 21 years of age and there is any detectable or noticeable amount of alcohol in their system while operating a motor vehicle in a public place or is deemed by an officer. The breath or blood specimen determines if alcohol is present in their body and will identify the amount of alcohol in their system as well as the presence of any other controlled substances or drugs. All right, so when you go down to the DPS office as an adult and you go down there to get your license, you are going to be filling out that form that gives implied consent that anytime you get pulled over by a police officer and they have probable cause to believe that you're driving while intoxicated or driving under the influence of drugs, you are going to consent to that blood test or breathalyzer test. Okay, because if not, you'll have your license suspended. So penalties for DWI and DUI of alcohol and drugs for adults. First offense, $2,000 fine, 72 hours to 180 days in jail, and your license can be suspended anywhere between 90 days and a year. All right, so know your legal limit. All right, this is very important. So a lot of times when I ask my students, what is intoxicated to you? A lot of times they think about somebody who's slurring their speech, they can't walk straight, they're visibly and obviously drunk. But in the state of Texas, when it comes to driving, that's not true. Okay, because you can have one or two drinks and it doesn't seem like you are anywhere near drunk. You could be even have a hard time telling if you had any alcohol at all. But in the state of Texas, they could be just as that little amount of alcohol can put you over the legal limit. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick. All right, for Chapter 10, the questions are going to be 45, 46, 83, and 84. Go ahead and I'll give you about 5 minutes to go ahead and work on those questions. Hit the pause button. When you're done, go ahead and hit play. All right, so Chapter 11 talks about motor vehicle crashes. Okay, anytime you're involved in an actual auto accident out there on Texas roads or anywhere in the United States for that matter, there are certain guidelines that you need to follow in order for you to be safe and do the right thing and not get in trouble with the law. Okay, so first of all, you should always notify the appropriate law enforcement agency as soon as possible when there is an injury or a fatality, when a vehicle involved cannot be moved off the roadway, okay, when a driver leaves the scene of a crash, that means they hit you and they took off, or you suspect a driver is intoxicated. All right, if you're involved in a crash that is not investigated by a law enforcement officer and the crash has not resulted in an injury or death of a person or damage or property of $1,000 or more. So this may be on your test. Make sure you pay attention to that. When is a crash report required? When it's $1,000 or more of property damage or there's an injury or death. If injury or death is not present and it's less than $1,000 of property damage and you try to call the police and they come out there, more than likely they're not going to take a police report. They're going to tell y'all to work it out amongst yourselves and go from there. So $1,000 of property damage or more is required for a crash report to take place or an injury or death. All right, so we're going to come down here. Crash involving an unintended vehicle. Okay, anytime you get into an auto accident where there's no one in the car, so if you're operating a motor vehicle that collides with and damages an unintended vehicle, you must immediately stop and either 1, locate the operator or the owner of the unintended vehicle and give your name and address. If the operator or the owner of the unintended vehicle cannot be found, then you must securely attach a written notice in a visible way to an unintended vehicle providing your name and address and a statement of the circumstances of the collision. Okay, so penalties for failure to stop: first offense, Class C misdemeanor, and punishable fine not to exceed $500. All right, so crash resulting in damages to a fixture or landscaping or structure. So that means it's just basically a self-involved crash and you damage somebody's property. If you are driving a motor vehicle involved in a crash resulting only in damage to a fixture, landscaping, or structure legally on and adjacent to a highway, you must 1, take responsible steps to locate the owner or person in charge of the property and notify him or her of the crash. 2, provide your name, address, and registration number of the vehicle you were driving. 3, if requested and available, you must show your driver's license to the owner or the person in charge of the property. And 4, if the crash is not investigated by a law enforcement officer and the crash has not resulted in injury or death of a person or damage to the property of any one person to an apparent extent of $1,000 or more, you must make a written report of the crash and file it with the Texas Department of Transportation no later than the 10th day after the crash. Okay, so penalties for failure to comply with these is a Class C misdemeanor and a punishable fine not to exceed $500. Hit and run crashes. If you're involved in a hit and run crash, report this crash to law enforcement for investigation. The Texas Department of Insurance advises uninsured motorist coverage will pay for damages in hit and run crashes reported to law enforcement agencies. Okay, aiding the injured. All right, in the event you are involved in a crash that injures another person, consider the information below. 1, when calling a doctor or an ambulance, ensure that you take notice of your surroundings and state the location of the crash clearly and correctly. 2. Do not assume people are not injured simply because they say they are not. Send for skilled help as quickly as possible. Unskilled handling can do more harm than good. 3. Do not move or lift the victim unless it's absolutely necessary. If a victim must be moved, get help and try to change the position in which the victim was found. 4. Stop serious bleeding when with thick cloth pads as clean as possible. Apply with pressure by hand or by bandaging. And then of course 5, keep the victim comfortable. If it is not hot, cool in the victims and provide the shade as much as possible. If it is cool, cover the victim with blankets or coats if necessary and if available. Okay, so going forward, just remember pedestrians always have the right of way, and in bicycle laws, there are laws that bicycles have to abide by. They're considered vehicles out there on the road, just like a car is, so you must treat them like another vehicle, and you always got to be wary to make sure that you don't get into accidents with them. So that means you got to be an extra eye looking out. So when you're looking over your shoulder, looking in your blind spots, try not to cut off a bicycle or hit them when changing lanes. Okay, and then additional safety tips. Who must wear a seatbelt? Everyone must wear a seatbelt. Okay, it's required by law. Everybody must wear a seatbelt. If a person is a minor not wearing a seatbelt, the person who's driving the car will receive the ticket for that minor. If the person is an adult not wearing a seatbelt, the person who's an adult not wearing the seatbelt will receive a ticket for that. So tomorrow or in the next session, so if you're in my teen class, tomorrow we're going to be reviewing for the DPS permit test. And then if you're in my adult class, the next video is basically going to be the instructions for that permit, and as well as a review for that test, and you'll be given time to take that test and then turn it in properly to get your DE form, so that way you can go get your permit. Alright, so this concludes session 2 for the adult class and day 2 for the teen class. If you're in the adult class, go ahead and move on to session 3 if you're ready, and session 3 will get you ready for that DPS test, so that way you're able to get your learner's permit and get ready to get your driver's license. For the teens, you must wait until the next day to watch the next session, or day 3 of the teen class. So good luck and see you next time.